Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. Of course, he's a friend of ours. He's the inventor, the founder of the WalkAway movement. He's a guy that went from Democrat to Republican because he actually did his legwork and learned about things, and then somehow got mixed up in the January 6th stuff. It's Brandon Struck. No, it's not Struck. It's Strzok. Brandon, how are you? Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So this whole thing should be a really, really good time because finally, vindication. Finally, Trump wins. And he does what he says he's going to do for people like you. For those that don't know, if you don't mind, give me 30 seconds or a minute just encapsulating why you were in any trouble at all when you were there serving as somebody who was just documenting what was happening on January 6th and didn't break any laws, didn't do anything wrong. Why were you somehow entwined in all of this?
Well, I mean, it was a couple of different reasons. I mean, the number one reason is because of my work and my advocacy of my organization, #WalkAway campaign, to get people to leave the Democratic Party. I mean, we've been very successful in getting hundreds of thousands of people to join our movement and leave the left. And now we had, Joe Biden and the Democrats taking full control of the federal government. So there was an opportunity there to do serious damage to me and to my organization, which they did. In addition to that, I was a very outspoken voice in the 2020 election fraud movement.
Right.
So I was traveling around the country doing a lot of rallies and, speaking out a lot about what I perceived to be the fraudulence of the 2020 election. So they wanted to punish me for that. But in a more practical sense, it was because I was, scheduled to be a speaker at a permitted event on Capitol grounds on January 6th. And as I was arriving on Capitol grounds to do my speaking engagement, I was getting messages from people all over the country watching on television saying that they were hearing that people were going inside of the building. So I started shooting a video and walked up to the east side of the Capitol. The barricades were fully open. There were no police officers. Nobody was rioting or committing any violence. Nothing crazy was going on. And there was a man at the top of the steps shouting, "They've opened the doors. They're letting us in." So I walked to the top of the steps.
Yeah.
When I got there, the doors were open. I stood there shooting a video for 8 minutes. And then a man came out and said, "They've cleared Congress. Move out, move out." I uploaded that video to Twitter. And then 2.5 weeks later, the FBI raided my house and charged me with 2 felonies, threatened me with a 3rd felony, and a misdemeanor charge. And I ultimately ended up pleading guilty to a misdemeanor.
It's simply unbelievable. And I'm glad that you encapsulated it again, because a lot of people watching and listening don't get it. And something you said in what you just said to us is so important. It was a permanent event. This was where they got a permit to do the rally. And again, with the First Amendment, it doesn't say anything about a permit in there, but still the right steps were taken, and some people vandalized, some people rioted, some people acted stupidly. I mean, that's all true. I get it. You didn't do any of those things. In fact, you not only had the right to assemble there, and it was permitted, and again, you don't need that in the First Amendment, you also were serving as the press, and you have the right to roll video on anything that you want to, and then share that video anywhere you want to share it. What were the felonies did they charge you with this whole interrupting an official session garbage that they charged everybody else with?
Well, they threatened that. So they charged me with 2 felonies. So let me address a couple of things that you just.
Please.
So the first thing is that, the Capitol and the Capitol grounds are immense. They're huge. So we did have it wasn't my organization, but
right.
The group that was doing this event that I was speaking at had a permit for a zone on the Capitol grounds.
Okay.
But what happens is if you go outside of that zone, then those are the restricted areas. The problem is there was no way to know.
Right.
There were no signs. There were no barricades that were closed. There were no police officers. Like literally, I walked into a crowd of thousands of people, and that's when, according to the government, I committed my first felony because they charged me with a felony for occupying restricted grounds, which was one of many ways in which they handled my case differently than other people's cases, because most people who went into the Capitol, including people who went into the Capitol through a broken window, were given misdemeanor charges of occupying a restricted building. I never entered the Capitol, but I got a felony for occupying restricted grounds.
Wow.
Right. And then the second felony that they gave me was impeding law enforcement, because they claimed that I stood outside of the building shouting for the crowd to take a shield from an officer. Never happened.
And you've got actual video that proves you didn't do it.
I didn't do it. Yeah. I don't have video that proves I didn't do it. What I have is a video with someone else's voice, and they
Ah.
said that that was my voice.
Wow.
But it wasn't my voice.
Well, as you said earlier, though, Brandon, we know that it's because of who you are. You can't leave the reservation. You can't switch sides. You can't be vocal about wanting to make sure that elections are fair and free. They had an opportunity now. Hey, we got this guy.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. Yeah. And the reason why this was such a perfect situation for them is because it allowed them to try to erode the trust between me and my audience.
Yes.
My organization, WalkAway, we've done very well. And by the grace of God, we survived this, and we're still here. And I still, have employees, and I still have funding and supporters, which is unbelievable. But what they wanted to do is basically create so much radioactivity around me that no one would want to support me and my organization. And so by doing that, they created this story that I'm like this, lunatic anarchist who went to the Capitol to encourage people to storm the building and attack police officers, which, first of all, is not my nature and not something I'm interested in doing. It's not who I am. But second of all, even if it was who I am, or I temporarily lost my mind or something, I would like at least credit for not being stupid enough to film myself doing it and then upload that to for my followers and support. Like, which of my donors is going to like watching me encourage people to attack police officers and film that and put it on social media? Like, I'm not that stupid.
Great point. That's a great point. Brandon, it's Brandon Straka. Go and follow WalkAway Movement, WalkAway campaign founder. There's a big schedule coming up. We'll talk about what you're working on. So President Trump wins. You played a big role in that. Hopefully I did a little something. Those watching and listening, they certainly played the role in getting him back in. Did you know going in, did you trust that you were going to be pardoned?
For the interest, I think, of my own kind of like emotional self-protection, I told myself, make your peace with the fact that maybe you won't be pardoned.
Okay.
And then I thought, if I do get pardoned, great, that'll be amazing. But there was so much anxiety around it, even within the J6 community and the families of the J6 community and people who care about them, because the messaging was not clear. They were saying it's going to be a case by case basis. And then some people were saying pardons on day one. Others were saying, oh no, it's going to be years. We're not going to know for years who's going to get pardoned. Some people are going to get pardoned. Other people are not going to get pardoned. I mean, the anxiety was like through the roof. And so I was like, you know what? Just make your peace with like, you're not going to get pardoned. Okay. You're just not going to get pardoned.
Right.
And then be okay with that. And then if you do get pardoned, you can be happy. I wasn't expecting everyone to get pardoned on day one. So that was like a really unbelievable surprise. And I'm so glad, because now the anxiety is gone. No one has to sit around worrying and wondering. No one has to sit around going like, why did he get pardoned, but I didn't? And it's done. And I think that's great.
Well, I'm guessing you found out when we did. You watched him actually do it on camera. I don't think you probably weren't notified beforehand. So how do you find out that you specifically are part of that group of 1,500 or 1,600 that are going to be pardoned now? Did they reach out to you? How does it work?
No. And no one got reached out to. It was
a lot of phone calls if they had to do it that way. Yeah.
No, it was the most like chaotic. Okay, because I'm a really skeptical person by nature. Right. I need solid proof before I believe anything. So the news started reporting, Trump pardoned 1,500 J6ers. That's what the news was saying. Well, here's the problem. 1,600 people got charged and convicted. Right. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, are there 100 people that didn't get pardoned and 1,500 did? And meanwhile, every person that I'm friends with in the J6 community went on X and they were like, I just got pardoned. And I'm like, how do you know? And I wasn't willing
because they watched it. Yeah.
I wasn't willing to say that I did, because I was like, what if there's 100 people who didn't and I'm part of that 100 people? I don't know.
Wow.
So it wasn't until my lawyer called me and he was like, I just read the executive order. He's like, 100% you're pardoned. And I was like,
I love it.
Okay. So then I went on X and I said, okay, I think I'm pardoned.
Even after your lawyer said you definitely are, you said you think you are. No, I get it. You don't want to jump the gun on that, because if you say that you are, then you're not. That's going to be a problem. Exactly. Plus, I think there were 16 people that he commuted that they're looking into more information to find out whether they should get full pardons too. But the case that I make, and I wonder what you think about this, because the reaction immediately from the left is, but police officers were brutalized and beaten up and they were attacked and assaulted, and nobody wants that, and nobody's happy about that. But I don't know in any jurisdiction in this great land where you get 4 years in federal prison with no due process for punching a police officer. I don't want anybody to do it, but that's never the punishment. So even if those who did the violence and those who did, they served their time, have they not, Brandon? I mean, I think 4 years in federal prison, many in solitary confinement, is probably plenty.
I think it's plenty. And I also think that people need to take into account all of the collateral punishments that people have experienced by being pulled into the January 6th narrative by the Biden DOJ. So, I mean, all of us, including myself, including people who didn't even go in the building and weren't even accused of violence, we were all placed on terrorism watch lists. We were all placed on the TSA Quad S list, so we couldn't get on an airplane without having to go through hours of screening and then be accompanied by armed air marshals on every flight. We all were permanently banned by PayPal, Venmo, Stripe, Patreon, banks, email services, social media accounts. We were all labeled insurrectionists, domestic terrorists, violent rioters. I mean, nothing like this has ever happened in American history, and the ways in which every aspect of our lives were permanently damaged, if not completely destroyed, is so far beyond. And that's even for people like me who didn't even commit violence or anything. So yeah, I think if you made a bad choice on that day and you broke a window or you made a really bad decision to, touch an officer or do something that you shouldn't have,
right?
This is enough. Like, it's more than enough, and it's time to move on.
Brandon Straka, spelled Straka. Go follow Brandon over on all the social media. WalkAway campaign founder. Again, I say this and I mean this. I'm not blowing smoke. You had a big voice in getting President Trump reelected. When you saw what went down in 2016 and then you actually researched the guy and realized they were lying in the media about him, you became full-throated for President Donald Trump and for the left to wake up. There are a lot of people who were like you, who identified as Democrat, but didn't really know what the Democrat Party was becoming. We now know what it's become. So you played a huge role in getting him reelected this time. I truly believe that. And hopefully you're going to play a huge role going forward. But what does the WalkAway movement do now? Because a lot of people did walk away. Are there still people who are open-minded to hear what your message is and learn from what you went through and what you learned?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally happening every day. I mean, just today, somebody on X did a testimonial saying that he's leaving the Democratic Party. A guy with a very large following, his post has gone extremely viral. It's happening all the time. In fact, I would argue that what we did with WalkAway has been so successful that I believe we've changed the culture. I mean, when you look at Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. and Elon Musk and all, I mean, this all walking away from the Democratic Party became a central theme of the Trump campaign in 2024. And it's almost become a celebrated thing. I mean, when people were sharing their walkaway stories 7 years ago when we started this, it was life altering. I mean, they'd lose their friends, their family, their job opportunity. I mean, it was devastating. Now it's almost like become cool to leave the Democratic Party and to talk about it. And I think we had an enormous part in changing that culture, but there's still a lot of work to do. What we're going to be doing in 2025, a lot of things, but very specifically, we're putting a lot of focus on Virginia and New Jersey. These are two states that have very important elections, gubernatorial elections, not to mention state legislatures, things like that.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to tell people, too, is, and this is very important, I think we learned a lot of hard lessons in 2020 and then in the 4 subsequent years that we ended up with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Democrat Party policies and rule. We can no longer, there's two key things that I want people to embrace as philosophies that the WalkAway campaign is putting out from this point forward. 2 things. Number 1, every year needs to be viewed as an election year. We can no longer just get involved every 4 years or every 2 years and, during the last couple of months leading up to an election. We have to view every single year. 2025, New Jersey has a governor's race. Virginia has a governor's race. And this is my second point. Every election needs to be viewed as a national election. We can't just do this thing where it's like, oh, well, I don't live in New Jersey, I don't live in Virginia, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
We learned in 2020 how much it does matter because a handful of states with far left Democrat Party governors signed executive orders, I would argue unconstitutionally, illegally, changing election laws in that state because of the COVID pandemic, allegedly.
Right.
And because of these executive orders and these illegally changed election laws, it changed the outcome of the election in those states, and that changed the outcome of the election for the entire country. So it does matter who the governors are in every state. It does matter who the legislators are in every state, and we have to get involved. So WalkAway is going to be spending a lot of time in Virginia and New Jersey helping to flip these states red, getting in there with the Black community, the Hispanic community. The Muslim community is very big in Virginia, so we're going to be doing a lot of work with the Muslim community, the Asian community. And we're going to be doing our best effort to make sure that we flip these states red. And we're going to be asking for everybody's help because it does matter. Every election's a national election.
Yes.
And every year's an election year.
I think the radical left has known that for a long time. That's why they were doing so well for so long. They were doing it on a local and state level, and the Republicans didn't realize that. I think that we've been awakened by you and others. WalkAway campaign founder Brandon Straka, and it's Straka. Go and follow him on X. It's Brandon Straka. Also, go. Is it BrandonStraka.com is where you want them to go? WalkAwayCampaign.com if they want to learn more about our movement. And please join. We have a new Facebook group. Facebook banned the original WalkAway campaign after January 6th. We have a new group now, #WalkAwayCampaignGroup. Group. Please join. And follow us on X at Brandon Straka or at, I said Straka. See how you did. You mispronounced your own name. What are you doing?
Well, because it helps people. Or the WalkAway campaign on X at Real WalkAway.
Yeah. But before I let you go, it's not your opinion what you said about what the governors, lieutenant governors, and secretaries of state did. It's in the Constitution. The way elections are done, general elections are done in states, is only decided by the legislatures. Right. If the legislature doesn't change the rule, you can't change the rule. They let them get away with it, and all these Zuckerbox, mail-in ballots that were counted, not one of them should have been counted. They were all illegally cast. They were all illegally counted. But I had Laura Trump on about a week and a half ago. She said, "You're right, Joe. We wanted 8 straight years of Trump, but it's so much better that we didn't get 8 straight years of Trump because the 4 years of Biden and Harris and these deep state idiots really showed Americans that you were right to begin with." So just give me a final word on that if you don't mind. I think we're better off that there were 4 years in between.
I actually do too, and I would actually make a slightly different argument. I would say that in addition to that, which I do agree with, I think we're seeing a whole different Trump than we would have seen had he just gotten a second term consecutively.
Yes.
A lot of people were not thrilled at Trump's reaction to COVID, Black Lives Matter, a number of things. And honestly, in his first term, there was not this aggressive draining of the swamp that we all really wanted to see. And now I think we're getting the Trump that we wanted to see the first time. I don't think we would have gotten it in 2020.
Yeah.
Perfect
point. No, I think you're absolutely 100% right. Brandon Straka, Straka. Follow him over on X. Go to, again, WalkAwayCampaign.com.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. WalkAwayCampaign.com. Go and follow him there. Join the groups. I'm glad you're back up on Facebook as well. Brandon, let's do it again soon. Congratulations on the pardon and keep up the good work.
Sounds great. Thanks, Joe.
All right, brother. Talk soon. We're back after this. Stay right here.